And here we are for episode 4 of the NAB Challenge. Your host tonight is Peter J. He's turned up again tonight, so over to you, Pete.
Yeah, thanks very much, Phoenix, and welcome everybody. Of course, it's the Adelaide Big Footy podcast this evening, and as we are every Tuesday night, we're live. And I don't want to say we're live and interactive though, so I'll just say at the moment that we're live. And joining us tonight, we've got for his debut on the podcast is Scorpus. How are you tonight, mate?
Yeah, doing all right at the moment.
Very good. And of course, resident panellist Nikki No. How are you, Nikki?
A bit sore, but here.
Very, very good. I'm just thinking about a bit of a hook for the jingle. You know, we're live, and I don't want to use interactive, of course. What do you reckon, guys? What could we use? There was the old Andrew Denton show called Live and Sweaty. What can we be? Live and what?
Well, I've just had a shower, so it's no longer live and, well, I'm not sweaty anymore.
How about live and awesome?
Live
That's
and awesome.
ambitious.
All right, we'll go with that. All right, just getting things kicked off. We've got the NAB Challenge, NAB Challenge 3 for Adelaide playing the Gold Coast on Friday evening. I just had a quick squiz on the board prior to coming on and noticed that there'd been a tweet about the fact that they're looking at Tom Lynch has released that Brad Crouch and also Curtly Hampton should be in the frame to play, which is pretty exciting news.
Yeah, it'll be our first look at those two, so I think a lot of people will be quite excited about that.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited to get a look at Hampton for the first time after he kind of didn't play all that many GWS games, at least that I saw, so it'll be really exciting to see what he can do for the Crows.
Well, we'd heard that he had a groin operation when he came to us, and I think he had that fixed, so he had the delayed pre-season, then he was managed during prison. And I think in one of his recent interviews, he actually said that he had a lot of, it was either him or it might have been from Burton, that he had a lot of groin issues last year as well. So that's probably explained we didn't see him a lot for GWS.
He had the rather unfortunate name on the GWS board as his nickname was WTF. And I see someone over there explain that they thought that the gap between what was very, very good and what was very, very bad was, fairly extreme. So I guess what Curtly be hoping for is probably just a little bit more consistency and maybe narrowing that gap between his best and his worst.
Yeah, well, I think part of the reason why he probably wasn't as good as people were expecting is that GWS played him in the backlines for some reason, and I think he's been saying a lot through the preseason that he really wants to play midfield and wing, and I think that's probably where he's best suited.
Yeah, I noticed that there was an article just the other day where he came out and mentioned that, and I thought it was terrific to see him on the front foot, trying to putting his hand up and saying he wants to claim a position, because I think none of us want anybody on the list that hasn't got that kind of ambition to get out there and be driven to succeed.
Yeah, I mean, you can be very positive about yourself, but not a douche. And I thought the way he came across in talking about that is that he's got belief in his own abilities, but he knows he has to work in order to get the best out of himself still. And that's what I was quite pleased about with that article.
One that I am interested in, because one player that I'm interested in, Harry Wigg. It was interesting that in the SNFL trial, both Wigg and Hampton featured. Wigg was named best and Hampton second best. Hampton gets the call up, but Wigg doesn't. Any thoughts on where Harry Wigg is?
Well, that was his first game playing on the wing. And I think that's where we kind of see where he's possibly going to play. Last year, he played mostly off a half-back. In the SNFL. He's still quite little, but he's got an amazing, amazing kick on him. So I think it's going to take him a little bit of time. So he's probably at SNFL level, but not quite ready for that step up yet. Yep.
Yeah, I agree. I really hope that we get to see him later this year, maybe at some point in the AFL, but for now it definitely does seem like he's still, unfortunately, I guess, at SNFL level, and we might even see, I mean, depending on how Hampton goes in the NAB and in his SNFL games, if he doesn't immediately make it to AFL, we might see, Hampton get that wing spot over Wigg, and yeah, I don't know what that means for Wigg, because there's a lot of, competition for his spot at the moment.
And I've just noticed on the board that Den Oz has been able to join us. How are you this evening, mate?
I'm good, thanks, guys. How are you?
Very good. We were just discussing some of the news that came through earlier that the side on Friday night should contain one Kirtley Hampton and also of special interest one Bree Crouch. What were your thoughts on that, mate?
That's the first I've heard of it, but it sounds pretty good to me.
Any thoughts on where you might like to see Big Kirtley shaping up?
He seems pretty keen on being in the midfield, so why not give him a shot? It's the NAB challenge. It doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah, fair enough. All right. Well, any other thoughts on the side for Friday night? Anybody?
I'm trying to think what we kind of want to see. We're expecting this to pretty much be as close to as our round one team as possible, isn't it?
That was apparently the case, yes, that they were wanting to try and get the round one side essentially settled in this game. But interesting to see whether Hampton will put himself in the frame or whether they just wanted to give him a run. I'm not really quite sure there.
Yeah, to me, it's even just interesting to see who they even name in the team as opposed to how the team actually performs. Because I guess that'll give us a really good idea of how the coaches see all the players at this stage, especially after, we've only seen some players, especially like Grigg, not getting all that much game time in some of the earlier games in the NAB challenge. So, yeah, I'm really interested to see how the coaches sort of rank our players.
And we get to see, hopefully, both Crouch boys on the field at the same time for almost the whole game.
Yeah, that'll be good.
Crouch passes to Crouch, who passes to Crouch, who passes to Crouch.
Well, I mean, if Brad Crouch can get 41 possessions in the intra-club thing, you never know how it's going to go in the NAB, and then we'll have, Matt Crouch as well. We could see maybe 80 possessions from them in a game.
Do you really think
that
they'll let Brad play the whole game, though? Do you think it'll be a bit like the Deledio situation they've been talking about, that he'll only play like a half?
I think they'll make the call during the game as to what it is, as to how he's going, and I think he'll be fairly closely monitored.
All right, that's the Friday night evening. Any other final thoughts before we move on from that game?
So, do you guys actually think that maybe Harry Deer and Riley O'Brien might keep the spot, or will they make way for others?
Unfortunately, as good as those players are, especially Riley O'Brien, I really can't see spots for them, especially if we have to cut down the amount of players that we're playing in the game. I think, is it only 24 players for the match?
Yeah, it's 24.
Yeah, so if it's 24, if we're bringing back Walker, with Deer and all those other players down there, it'll be pretty stacked. So unless he can sneak onto the bench, I just can't really see him getting game, unfortunately.
I think it's just interesting that we played him with Walker and JJ and Lynch in the first game.
And McGovern.
Oh, yeah, and McGovern. Danos, stats
Hello.
man. Do you know how many rotations we used in the Fremantle game at all?
I have zero idea. Let me look it up for you.
Cool. Because that's the one thing I was interested as to how close, because I know we used, I think, around 130 in the West Coast game. But I was interested to see if we actually dropped it down a little bit for that Freo game or not, closer to the 90 mark.
All right, I'll come back to you when I can find
When you find it. Cool.
Be surprised to see either here's now Hampton will take up a spot and Brad Crouch will be back for a spot as well. So that's 2 to come in and quite a number to cut out. So just can't see room for those 2 guys.
Be interesting to see what happens with VB and McKay. I think McKay might be close to dropping out. I think VB was actually pretty good against Freo.
Yeah, I agree. I thought he was okay.
And he does provide some nice flexibility.
Sorry to cut in. So I'm just having a look at the official AFL stats, and it says 0 interchanges for both teams. So I'm not sure whether they've recorded the number.
So nobody counted. Bugger. Because I wanted to know just to see how well we're running out of games, because that's one of the things I've been interested in, looking at how teams are playing through the NAB challenges, to who gets closer to that 90 interchange cap, or who ignores it, and then how they run out games.
Yeah, I guess just unfortunate that those stats haven't been recorded. It seems like they haven't been recorded for a lot of the NAB challenge matches, just having a look. So, yeah, it's a bit hard to tell.
I reckon teams might have recorded it themselves.
Yeah, definitely.
A lot of the problem is that a problem is that a lot of different websites directly source their stats from the AFL feed, the Champion Data feed. So if the Champion Data official stats doesn't have the stats on it, then pretty much all sites that feed off that won't have it as well, which doesn't help us.
Well, I would imagine that they would have to be, now as we get ever closer to round one, they'll have to be looking at reducing the rotations on Friday to the 90 rotations. I think that I'm pretty sure I read North did it on the weekend, so a number of teams are doing it, I think, and so I'm sure that'll come our way on Friday.
Yeah, I'm similar boat as you, Peter. We're agreeing.
All right, that's a look at the game on Friday. Just now moving to the NAB Challenge generally, and just trying to get a bit of a feel for where some of the teams are at and how some of the teams are shaping up towards round one. Any thoughts? I'll kick it off by saying for a reason of torture and nothing else, and because I'm a masochist, I sat there and endured the Melbourne Western Bulldogs game on Sunday. And very, very little you can take out of it when the Western Bulldogs had 16 changes. And if you're a follower of the odds, it was quite interesting that the odds makers, generally speaking, didn't catch up with the fact that they'd made those 16 changes. It was only on the morning that the odds blew out on the Western Bulldogs. Even up to a couple of days before, the odds were very much in their favour. But anyway, it is very difficult to take anything away from that. I mean, yeah, it was a very, very blustery day, and very, very difficult to score against the wind, and conditions were hot, and I'm just not quite sure what you can take out of it, really.
Well, Melbourne's still trying to play on at all costs, because I've noticed that in their other games they've played. I was busy watching a car race instead.
Yeah, they definitely were. I watched that game as well, and yeah, the Melbourne game style, it seems like they're trying to be a lot more attacking than they were previously, not just focusing on defence. And the one thing that stood out to me, apart from the fact that the game was pretty mediocre overall, was Jack Watts playing in the forward line. I think he's got a lot of potential up there. I mean, I know we've been saying potential for Jack Watts for years, because he's, 24 or something, he's nearly free agent. But I really think that's probably where he should play, in the forward line. I'm not sure whether they'll do that, because, they've got other forward line players there. Although that said, Dawes is pretty rubbish, so you never know. But yeah, I like the way he was playing in that game up forward.
So he started playing as forward. They then moved him all around the park, couldn't decide where to play him, and then finally figured out that maybe he was just a forward to start off with.
Yeah, I think he played forward as a junior, didn't he? Like before he was drafted?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just odd. I mean, with his size, he's like over 190 centimetres, and Melbourne, they have like Jesse Hogan, Garlett, and that's about it as far as forwards are concerned. You'd think that maybe, he might play up there, Jack Watts, but obviously it's taken him this long.
Yeah, I have a real hankering for having a sniff at him as a free agent. I think there's a lot of untapped potential there, and I think that he's the kind of player that had a lot of pressure on him, and I think he's the kind of player, if you got him over and said, look, we've got a specific defined role for you to play, and give him a lot of love and a lot of care, and let him know that he doesn't need to be the number one focus, I reckon he would be a very, very handy pickup and could really blossom.
Yeah, I think that's part of the thing with Jack Watts. Like, there's a lot of people saying, he's a number one pick, but he hasn't really lived up to that. But if he was just like a regular, late first or second round pick, he'd still be pretty handy in the Melbourne team. I
think you touched upon it there, Nicky. He needs a role, and he's been shunted around the ground at Melbourne. Every time you watch, have the misfortune of watching Melbourne play, he's playing in a different position. and that can sort of occur from game to game or quarter to quarter. And I just think that, the way that we have recruited someone like Paul Seedsman, and we've obviously, I presume we've sold him on a role, a specific role, and we're playing him in that role, and he seems to be, growing into that. And I think that if we were to take the same view with someone like Jack Watts, I think that there is a massive return there for someone, and it's just cap space.
On Seaman, there was a really interesting interview he did with SEN. He was there actually, their golf section. He was talking about golf and stuff because he's quite fond of golf, but he admits that he's not very good at it. And then towards the end of it, and this is up on SEN, so if people want to go and have a listen, they should, because it was really interesting in that they were, of course, being SEN and Melbourne, they were quite bemused as to how he's ended up at Adelaide. And they pointed out that he was being chased by Gold Coast, North Melbourne and Sydney, as well as us. And he met with Adelaide first, and he then went and met with the other ones. And he actually said that the others were really good places and everything else, but when he met with Adelaide, our morals and our belief, I think it was our belief system or something, standards, they just aligned with him. And all he kept thinking about was trying to find reasons not to go to Adelaide after he'd met with the other clubs. He kept trying to go, well, are they better? No. And it was just really interesting that's the way his mindset was, and they couldn't quite still get their heads around of why on earth is this Victorian choosing to go to Adelaide. And he did say the traffic's also better.
A young, early 20s Victorian as well.
Yeah. With such strong links at Collingwood too, with his family. His grandfather was president of the club. But he's just, what's best for him and his football, and he can see an advantage with us. But I found that really fascinating that he said that he kept trying to come up with reasons not to come to Adelaide, and he just couldn't.
Well, I think he made a good choice.
Any other games that people have watched over the weekend?
I would say that overall, just having a look at them, GWS are looking pretty good, which I think we all think that they're possibly going to move up. North Melbourne are thereabouts again, but I still reckon this is last chance saloon for them because they're very old. Geelong are stuffed after Thurlow for a year. Their backline is interesting. Who else has impressed me?
Where are the Hawks?
Collingwood, not bad.
Where are the Hawks at? They had a funny game one where they played Carlton, and they I think they only played half the team and just got a hold of Carlton, not many, and then they got smashed by Richmond, and so I guess we'd be expecting to see a bit of something from them against North Melbourne this weekend.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting game to see if they actually pull their finger out, because is the loss of Ruffy just one player too big a loss for them?
He's a very unique player because he plays a number of roles and he plays it well. So
yeah.
He's a big loss.
Be interesting to see if Clarkson can pull a little rabbit out of the hat and rejig his little plan without him in the side.
Scorpus, you're over in Melbourne. What's the view with Hawthorn over there?
Oh, I mean, I'm not sure I follow the Melbourne teams too much over here, but I think it's kind of a sort of, they haven't really tried all that much in the NAB Challenge, so it's really hard to sort of gauge how they're going. But I think people are pretty optimistic over here that Hawthorn has the cover up forward to replace Roughhead. I think Gunston will probably flourish this year, or at least hopefully for him, not hopefully for us. But yeah, I'm not sure that guys like Tim O'Brien are really the answer. I'm not a huge fan of Tim O'Brien. I know some people on the Adelaide board think that he might be a trade option for us, but I just don't rate him at all. So yeah, I think it'll still be interesting to see how they cover him this year.
Well, we've got 3 Rorys, so we could have 2 O'Briens.
Yeah, I'm with you, Scorpus, on O'Brien. Although I did read in the write-up from their, I think it was the game against Richmond, even though they got their pants pulled down, that the coach was pretty happy with the way that O'Brien presented and may potentially be in for a round one spot. But the thing is, I'd suggest that if he can't nail a spot, what is he now, fourth year on the list, something like that? I think if he can't nail something down with Ruffat out of side for 6 months, then I think he'll struggle.
Do we give them Loudon back? Because they didn't want to lose Loudon. They actually wanted to keep hold of him.
I think at this point they're welcome to have Loudon back.
He's a very unique creature, because I did watch a couple of his VFL, some highlights and stuff like that. He does appear disinterested, but I think that's just the way he is.
Is it bad that as soon as I saw Paul Hunter's highlights when he got drafted, that I immediately sort of placed him above Loudon in the pecking order? It's kind of bad. But...
Sydney Swans are another interesting one. They played a pretty strong team against a second-string Port outfit and only just got over the line, and then were accounted for pretty comfortably by GWS last weekend.
I think they're in trouble.
And I just wonder whether they're in a bit of trouble.
Their half-back line, they've got no run from it. No run whatsoever.
Yeah, they've just got no outside players. I watched parts of their games, and I'm not sure it's whether they're not trying in the NAB Challenge, because I know they have a history of not trying, but they've got all their good inside players, but there's just no one on the outside or at halfback or anything to, break the lines and kick long. It's just not looking good for them.
And they're having to play Tippett in the ruck, and they're pushing Buddy up, which means, what is it? Somebody pointed out their tallest player in their forward line then becomes Heaney.
Wow.
It's bizarre what they're doing with Tippett, because they specifically brought in Sinclair to replace Pike, and they're not even playing him as the first ruck. It doesn't make any sense to me.
I think who was it on the board who actually pointed out that when Tippett came to us, he's a better ruck than he is a forward, and we just played him more forward because he's quite a unique creature. And so they got him at Sydney as this forward who can ruck quite well, and then realised, well, actually, no, he's better in the ruck.
He definitely had to learn how to become a forward, whereas rucking was more natural to him, I think, and I think that's probably the case with most basketballers come footballers.
Look, I'm not someone that gambles on the football, but I know that there's probably a lot of people out there listening that probably do. And one of the things I thought I might try and bring to the podcast is just to do a little bit of research and perhaps try and talk a little bit about odds and things like that. And just in the little bit of research I did for round one, I reckon Collingwood would be an absolute value special. They're paying $2.40 at the moment to play Sydney up there, and I reckon if you had Collingwood in amongst a multi there somewhere, they would be a pretty handy bet.
There'd be more of a sure thing if it was at the ANZ Stadium, but the way they're playing, I'm quite impressed with Collingwood. I think they'll be finals contenders this year.
And they've got a good set of midfielders, and they've got young blokes like Fasolo pulling their fingers out.
Yeah, definitely.
No, I won't go there.
Yeah, I think they look to be a big improver, and as I say, I reckon they're an absolute Monty to get over Sydney in Sydney in round one. Any other teams we want to have a look at, guys?
How about the two worst from the NAB Challenge, Carlton and Essendon? They look absolutely awful.
Oh, they're horrible. Both of them. Seriously, that game they played, it needed the Benny Hill music the entire game.
It's honestly one of the worst games I've ever seen.
Made our game against West Coast look really high quality.
Yeah, I didn't have the misfortune of catching that game, but I thought it was pretty rich against Geelong that Essendon were resting some players. So I just don't think that they'd have that luxury, would they? I thought they were getting ahead of themselves a bit to rest anybody.
I did love the Carlton crowd booing Crowley. And just a big grin on his face. that still amused me. That's still, I think, probably one of my best amusements out of the NAB challenge so far.
All right, well, that's a bit of a look for everybody at what's going on with the other teams in the NAB challenge, and we'll follow that closely as we get closer to round one. All right, we're just moving towards the last 15 minutes of the Tuesday night live, and we're just looking to see what other news anyone might want to discuss. I thought one of the interesting stories today was the Maria Sharapova, the way that she very, very gracefully got up and took responsibility for her use of a banned substance, even though it sounded like she was a little bit unlucky. But what did you think, Nikki? I thought there was probably a little bit of a lesson there to be learnt.
Well, speaking of Crowley, he did exactly the same thing. The way he dealt with it as well, I thought, was exactly how you do it. Right, yes, I did it. Here's the reasoning behind it, but I did it. I have to take responsibility, and basically, my bad, sorry. It's exactly how you do it, because there is a difference though with Sharapova and Crowley, is that they both had positive tests. So you could not deny that they had doped. The interesting thing is, who was it? Hank. Hank put something on there. I'm trying to remember what it was. We need Hank around so he can remind me what he said something quite good on the board, and I've forgotten it now. Sorry, Hank.
Any other news anyone wants to have a look at?
Well, here's interesting. So apparently us on the chat said Jennifer Capriati reckons she should hand back all her trophies. The problem is it's only been banned since January the 1st. Thank you, Ryan B., who just made that exact point. It's something she's been taking for heart medication. It got put on the list only this year, January 1st, and it was put under a different name. So she looked at the list, but of course her drug wasn't listed on there.
And yeah, National Task, I definitely agree that she needs a drug to stop grunting.
The anti-grunt drug would be handy for her, wouldn't it?
Do those exist? I hope so. Probably banned though.
And just referring to perhaps back to a bit of Crows news. Anybody got any Crows news they want to talk about?
Well, we signed up a major sponsor. I'm not sure what the level of sponsorship is with Chemist Warehouse.
Premium partner.
Yeah,
so they're on the up level.
Yeah, they'll be the naming sponsor for the Crow Show, which is good. I think that replaces Farmers Union, if I remember right.
Yes.
So yeah, I guess that's exciting. I think they're a pretty good store, so good on them for signing up someone new to sponsor that.
And what is it? Sam Jacobs was on the Today Show this morning as well, giving some somebody's being cheeky on the chat, giving away some things to Lisa Wilkinson. And we know who's being cheeky on the chat. Hello, it's the rest of you lot.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were relating something there from the chat, Nikki. Yeah, look, I think that was a really good news story, Scorpus. Good point bringing that up. It's always good to see a new sponsor on board, and no doubt Fags just keeps going from strength to strength in making sure that the financial side of the house is kept in order.
Oh, what do you guys think about the sleep room where they have naps in the afternoon?
It's certainly interesting. I guess they've got their data that says it's a good idea, but yeah.
I want to know, if we get a player, I want to know who is the one person you don't want to be sleeping in that room with, like the snorer or whatever. You know, just that one annoying person. I've been away on like sports with national teams, etc. And yeah, there's one person you never ever want to share a room with. I want to know who it is in the club.
Oh, I reckon it's Josh Jenkins. He seems like a snorer.
Got a big snoz.
Hopefully we get him on the chat and we can ask him.
As a fully fledged Commonwealth public servant, I was a little bit surprised to see that there was any kind of surprise or interest in a sleep room in the afternoon.
Well, they actually do say that having that little afternoon nap is beneficial. There is research on it. And Finland has actually shortened the working hours, and people are actually working better with higher quality work.
Australia is known as the longest hours working country in the world, though.
Yeah, it is.
Wow, really? Is that right? My goodness me.
Wayne's World isn't the sleep room a couple of years old, used for players having to spend nights continuously icing. They did have one, but I think it was just a single room. This now is one like with bunk beds and everything else, so it's obviously bigger.
Was it just me, or do the beds... I'm just looking at a photo right now of the sleep room, and the beds, they don't look that comfortable.
No.
Well, they don't want them to be too comfortable. They only want them to get 15, 20 minutes sleep.
Yeah, just that little rest.
I've actually been campaigning for siesta time at work for at least 4 or 5 years. They think I'm not being serious, but I am.
Now, just a quick change, Nikki. If Wayne World is there listening, I think it's almost time we gave him a warning for a potential report to the Human Rights Commission for his continual denigration of the vertically challenged Lachie Neale. And I can only assume that Wayne engages in dwarf throwing in his spare time and thinks that that's a fairly good event to go and have a look at.
Now, I don't know how to say this user's name, but he's got Malira, he's got kind of Rat, he's got Atkins, and
Miller
something
Atkins
show on the end. Yes, because it throws me because of the rat bit. I do agree with him that we need to get McGovern and get Neale. That I'm happy with.
Yeah, should be able to get it done with picks, I reckon. First, maybe a sweetener on there, maybe one of our not as good players or something, and late pick or something. I think that will get it done.
Yeah, put it this way, Fremantle are going to need picks for a certain GWS player.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for, is that I think that probably, in and of itself, a first, probably not quite enough, particularly if he has a good year this year, but if they're in a situation where they're looking for currency, then it may work in our favour.
I think Ross Lyon will eventually get so sick of Matt Taberner spudding it up every week that he'll demand the picks for that certain GWS player, and I think we'll be able to get something over the line for Neale.
Now, question for you, Danos, from Ryan B.
Yeah, no, I was reading. I was waiting for a chance to kick in.
I actually want to go with a quote here of both. Both is good.
Yeah, well, you've cut my lunch a bit there, Nikki. I don't play Supercoach Ryan B, but in my fantasy side, I've actually got both.
That's both Matt and Brad Crouch.
Both Matt and Brad Crouch.
Oh, they're ball magnets, the pair of them. And plus, we know from that SNFL game that they played, they're just going to keep giving it to each other.
And they're both so underpriced.
Oh, nice.
They will make us lots of money.
Now, do we want to wage into this debate that kind of took over the board for a couple of days of Modra versus Danger, who's better?
Modra.
I thought it was an interesting debate, but I mean, I think that before you can even start the debate, you've got to say, well, what actually defines a club great? What is a club great?
Yeah.
Is it games played? Is it awards won? Is it something that you just, it's just a subjective feel that you've got? So without that without that criteria in place, it's a little bit hard to make a call, isn't it?
Well, I mean, you could just define it as club great being someone who doesn't leave and go to Geelong, and as someone who, kicks a lot of goals or something. I think that might sway that argument.
Except for Modra left.
That's true.
I believe he was kicked out.
That wasn't of his choice. Yes, I don't think that was very much of his choice. But for me, what it comes down to is when he first burst onto that scene, you had people in Victoria turning up to Crows games when we played interstate just so they could say, we watched Modra. And he turned Victorian kids into Crows fans.
Oh, look, there was no doubt that he was amazing, and but I really think that if you to me a club great, and this is probably going to be controversial, and I loved Modra, I really did, but to me neither Danger or Modra qualify as club greats. I mean, if you're picking the Crows' best 22 over since inception, then absolutely both players would play. But to me, if you're looking at club greats, you're looking at
McLeod,
Rashido, Hart, 300 game players, multiple All-Australian, multiple award winners. They're the guys that are the club greats to me.
Yeah, but with Modra, you're talking about a player that's, he's been leading our goal tally overall by quite a margin, or at least 140 goals. And, he for 5 consecutive seasons, he topped our goal scoring for the season. And, he took those Mucks of the Year as well. So, look, I think that he definitely has to be considered as among the greats, just purely because of his record, even if he didn't play, his whole career at Adelaide, and even if he didn't, play 200 games or 300 games or whatever, he's still one of the best players to ever pull on the jumper for us.
So I would actually say the club legends are Macca and Roo. And then just underneath them, I would have Hart. And then Modra.
DJ.
I would put Darren Jarman, Goodwin. Edwards was so durable, and you kind of forgot that he was a good player. He's that little rung just below.
Bickley.
Smart.
Yeah, Bickley. Yeah, then you'd go to Bickley and Smart.
And
I reckon Thompson's been amazing. That's the thing, is Saliba. He played one game, didn't he? Somebody's being naughty on the chat again. And I think Danger kind of fits there at that level. He was good, but it took him a couple of years. We saw flashes, but he didn't have the consistency, and he got the consistency those last couple of years, but he's not at that high echelon.
Certainly.
And somebody's brought up one of my favourite players, two of my favourite players, which is Death and John Klug.
I'm certainly, Scorpus, not going to dine a ditch over an argument on Tony Modric because I loved him. He was certainly, made it special to go to the footy. And I just think that, to me, a club great, there is no real final measuring stick. It's who you believe, in your mind, who was a great at the club. And it's not, they're kind of players that you love them, and certainly not going to, as I said, die in a ditch about an argument as to whether they're a club great or not, I don't think.
Okay, can you guys name where you were when Modra took that mark against North Melbourne?
Western Stand, second tier.
I'm not sure I was born.
You're a baby. You're a baby.
But I think I was. It might have been one.
That would have been 94, I think.
Yeah, 94.
Ooh,
I had perfect view of it from that stupid freaking McGuinness kick where they dollied it up. But I can remember it.
It was a fantastic moment in the club's history. Lady and gents, that brings us to about a minute to go. Any final summary or final thoughts on anything that you want to put to the listeners before we check out for this Tuesday Night Live?
I can't wait until Friday night. I'm really looking forward to watching it.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, totally agree.
I think something's happened with Peter's mic.
Where's Peter gone? Oh, something's gone all muffly.
I think he's really trying to wrap it up, but he's having a hard time.
Apparently, we actually have 6 minutes left, not one.
Well, that's funny. It was 9:15 by my clock. But anyway, well, if we want to go for another 6 minutes, then play on.
We could do that. Oh, there we go. 5 minutes 40. We've got a countdown occurring.
So, what are your predictions for the weekend? How much do you think we're going to win by, or if we're going to win at all?
I would still like to keep our streak running, but are we the only team that Gold Coast hasn't beaten yet? Or Gold Coast hasn't won against yet?
Ooh, interesting question. I wonder if I can look that up.
Because I'd be really annoyed if that finally goes down.
I think you're right, Nikki. I don't think that they've beaten us at all.
I don't
No,
think
they
they've
haven't
beaten
beaten us at all
Hawthorn.
yet. Yeah, interesting. Well, Ryan B reckons it's us by 40.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident we'll get past them relatively easily.
Peter, get closer to your mic.
He's just stuffing it up again.
He is. He's unplugging himself.
Need some tape.
That or somebody's just coming and pulling it out from him.
I bet you to it, Scorpus. Gold Coast has not beaten West Coast, Sydney, Hawthorn, Fremantle, or Adelaide.
I would like to still remain in that group.
I don't think we will.
I think we will.
You reckon we're going to get beaten?
However, this record does not include preseason games.
Well, they haven't beaten us in those either.
No, and I couldn't tell you whether they've beaten any of those teams in the preseason or not.
I don't think we've even played them before in the preseason, but I might be wrong.
Yeah, we generally tend to forget the preseason unless we made a grand final.
And then we forget those after a few rounds anyway.
Yeah.
And probably a question that might be obviously answered given the fact that Brad Crouch is playing. Is there anything in particular that we're all looking forward to the most about Friday night?
Just seeing, I think, a bit more of what our Pike game plan is going to be.
To me, it's seeing more Troy Menzel. I really think he'll step it up from last week and maybe kick a couple more goals because I think he's going to be a great player for us.
Has he been named to play as well?
Well, teams haven't come out yet, but I think he'll play.
Yeah, I reckon they might give him another go. And Pikey was interesting about that on... he was on AFL Tonight on Monday night, so you can actually view that on the Fox Sports website, and it's about 17-minute mark. He talked about Troy a little bit and about the work that he has to do, but he sounded fairly positive that it seems that Troy is trying, was the impression that I took out of it. But what I'm also interested in, Malira, is he going to play round one? Is he going to continue his good form?
He looked really good at the start of in the first week, and then against Fremantle he quietened down a lot. So hopefully he can pick up again.
He didn't play a lot of minutes though.
Well, I think we don't have much time left, and Peter J maybe has unplugged himself again. Not sure what's going on there.
He's doing well.
Is he around? Hello?
Hello?
Where's Peter? Oh,
yeah, you're there.
Go.
Good.
I was pushing the wrong push to talk.
Oh, no.
We're very, very professional outfit. It's a machine.
Completely. All right, I reckon we've talked enough. What do you guys reckon?
Yeah, Look, I reckon that will probably do us. Now I'll go for my second wrap-up. Thanks very much, Nikki. Appreciate your input as always. And Scorpus, hope you enjoyed your debut session. It was terrific to have you along. Got a pretty good voice for radio there, mate, I think.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, hopefully I'll be back, and I'll be hosting a podcast later as well.
Nice.
Excellent. Dan Oz, as always, good to have you along.
Yeah, thanks, Pete. Sorry for the tardiness.
No worries, mate. Not as tardy as I was last week when I didn't even make it. So, all right. Thanks. That's about as tardy as it gets.
You for that.
Thanks very much to everybody out there that listened and put up with our rubbish for 3/4 of an hour. We appreciate it. And we'll look forward to catching you again next Tuesday night for a live session of the Adelaide Big Footy podcast. Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Catch you later.